there was a study done by Global Ipsos Research Company for the Episcopal Church. And a lot of the questions focused on some things like, how religious are you, or how religious are the people around you, or, what kind of political stances do you take, or, what do you think about education? But in the process, they also ask some questions about, like, what characteristics do you associate with Christians in general? They asked questions about, you know, what what do you think the central message of what Jesus had to say was? Do you think Jesus was an important spiritual figure? And I don't want to go through all of this because I saw Kelley had some really good stuff to say on this. Kelley, what'd you think of this study? Did you think there was any value to it, or is it just people kind of spinning their wheels?
No, there was lots of numbers in this story, that's for
Mm,
sure. I've covered other stories by this author in the past on a different feature, but he is a theist. I mean, his ultimate goal is to bring people into the church, so he has that uh, going for him. And so there's that bias that is in the article, but he does at least show some understanding of why the churches are bleeding worshipers
mm,
and a willingness to try to change that, which I think is a good thing. If we start to get rid of some of that toxic edge off Christianity. There were a few things in the study I found very interesting, and one was the 24% drop in people that thought religion was a force for good in just 1 year. I mean, that's a
mm.
huge shift in 1 year. And it makes me wonder what happened in that 1 year that made that shift happen. And I can only think that it was January 6th with all the Christian nationalists there and all the Christian symbolism that was present at that horrible thing that happened. And I think it turned a lot of people off.
Mm.
It was one of the things that really stood out to me as I was watching it, and I realized I'm looking at it through kind of a tainted lens because of my feelings about religion. But when I see data like this, it kind of tells me that I might be right about that, right?
Yeah.
Um, there was a quote from Ryan Berg, who was a minister that was interviewed for the article. And he said, if non religious people are turned off by what they see as the stricter faith of many Christians, evangelicals in particular, then wouldn't it make sense for them to seek more flexible alternatives? Which is true. But his solution is to make a more liberal church. And I don't think it shows this disconnect. But the problem is people aren't turning away from the church, they're turning away from faith completely. They're becoming atheists, they're becoming agnostics, they're becoming the non-affiliated, right? And that's a really good thing for us, but I don't think that if they want to get the pews full again, the queues, they're not a pool hall, that they should kind of take that into account. They're not trying to appeal to the people who aren't believing anymore, the people that are leaving the church. They need to appeal to people in these toxic churches and bring them in and show them that there's a kinder, gentler way to be a Christian.
I gotta say, Kelley, I might go back to church if there were pool tables or air hockey, but
Yeah, right.
but Teo, Teo, what do you think on this?
Well, yeah, I think I will start by referring to the same thing that Kelley said about this idea of a different church or a more flexible church, because they mentioned one church that which whose name I have heard once before, and that is the Episcopalians. I remember hearing about them in the Atheist Experience some time ago, and apparently they are kind of the most liberal type of church out there, because they try to, be like in peace with everybody, and that important thing is what the love thy neighbor thing that Jesus teaches. Because because I personally feel that that is a little bit better than what the regular churches in the USA offer. For example, according to to this article, which I think it was very interesting. Uh, I'm going to refer to the characteristics of the Christians in general, because hypocritical was 55% of the results for them, judgmental 54%, self-righteous 50%, And then we had arrogant, unforgiving, and disrespectful. And this is what I see online. This is the type of people that always who show that there is no love like Christian hate. And I don't want to believe that this is everybody out there. I guess this is just a small part of extremist religious fanatics, maybe. But sadly, we all feel that they are the representation of their religions, not only because they are actually following and quoting the Bible. And heck, you see what they are quoting, and they are right to behave in that way. It's their own religion, the one that says that you should hate anyone who believes in other gods. You should kill them. You should kill us atheists. You should kill homosexuals. You should kill people wearing tattoos, especially those guys who write tattoos of Bible proverbs on their arms. And this stereotype sadly is so common that I have seen several times this meme of Jesus where he's preaching to be racist, xenophobic, and deny help to others, because that's the way that Jesus behaves according to these people, who I think that they actually believe in the Bible more than in Jesus, because their behavior is awful, terrible. And this article demonstrates it. It shows that people realizes how arrogant, unforgiving, hypocritical, and judgmental these religious extremists are. Once again, I don't want to say that all Christians are like that. I'm just saying that people who shout the loudest, they seem to represent most religions, and they behave in that way. And I really hope that they are just a minority inside church and not the common denominator amongst them all.
Well, I did think it was interesting that it said 48% of mainline Protestants agreed with the statement "repent and believe" when asked, basically what was Jesus's main message. That seems problematic to me. That message doesn't seem like the loving, happy, friendly, Jesus that I think often is portrayed out there. Another part of it, though, it had to do with the perceived judgment and persecution by many of these Christians polled. Genevieve, you had some stuff on that. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of figures in this poll and in this article, but the one that I found very troubling, or just little curious, was the statement that conservative Christians feel judged for sharing their conservative views. And that was 45% of evangelicals, 40% of non-evangelical Christians. Republicans are more likely to agree with this, of course, than Democrats. And I thought that was really interesting because it feels like they're just sort of missing the mark. When we're talking about what modern conservatism is, when they're talking about these conservative views, what can we sort of, extrapolate? What might they be talking about? It seems like they're talking less about, small government and low taxes. Lately, the news has been, well, the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, or the ridiculous abortion laws in Texas and many other states, the anti-trans laws. My gosh. And so, yes, I'm sure they feel judged, but they should rightfully be judged because that's blatantly disrespectful of human rights. I mean, I can only think that the right thing to do would be to judge them. And Kelley, I'm so glad that you brought up, what happened on January 6th, because can we talk about the irony of having having crosses, I'm sorry, being carried into a building that you're forcibly entering and breaking into, while there's also a gallows set up outside with a noose. Did they not see the irony of that?
Yeah.
Jesus was sacrificed on the cross, but here we've got this to sacrifice these other guys,
Yeah.
It's a madhouse. It's a mad world.
So Kelley, what do you think about it? I kind of got the feeling that this survey was done not really in a way to say how do we be better necessarily, but more kind of in a way of how do we reach back to those lost sheep? Kind
Mhm.
of how do we as the Episcopal Church kind of soften up just enough to bring back some of these people that have left? Do you think that's the right move for the Episcopal Church or any other church, or do you think that's prolonging the problem?
It is probably just prolonging the problem in the long run, right?
Mm.
Because we are becoming a more secular society more and more as time goes on. So it is probably just prolonging that problem. But on the other hand, as I mentioned before, if they can pull people out of these more toxic, far right evangelical churches,
Mm.
that can only be a better thing, right? It can only make our society better if we can get people to stop thinking about these really far right ideals and having the idea that they have to impose them on everybody else. So in the long run, yeah, it's probably just prolonging the whole problem of religion that we have with our society, but it's also what's the word? What's the phrase I'm looking for? It's also blunting the sword, I guess.
Mm.
Right. And in that respect, I'm all for it. If they can keep blunting the sword while we're chipping away from the other side, great.
Teo, what do you think? Are you hopeful about this? We got to get through one of these that you are hopeful about. So what do you think here?
Am I going to be hopeful about something talking about how many Christians still are a majority over there, and seeing how you have those laws that we make follow? I'm still worried. Did you check the thing about do they believe that Jesus said that you should feed the hungry? Only 55% of
5%.
mainliners, I have no idea who are those, said that yes, and 60% of evangelicals. That's almost like half of people. The rest are those guys who say, "Oh no, 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 they are poor because they want to be poor, so we shouldn't do anything about them." For me, it's worrying. I'm sorry, emo guy today, but the numbers are interesting. But when you see how prominent some certain specific numbers are,
Hmm.
I'm worried that you guys are going to keep becoming more and more religious, and that here in Latam we're going to start following your example. And here, when we follow the example, as we saw in Brazil with the soccer religious team, we replicate the problem or the trend, sorry, and make it even stronger. So I have my reasons to be worried about all of this.
Now, Genevieve, help me out here, because 80% of evangelicals agreed, love your neighbor. 70% of evangelicals agreed, love your enemies. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? Or is there more that could be done?
Well, I don't really think that's enough, of course. Because if you look around in practice, they're not really doing that, or at least not to the standards that we would sort of hold them to. When I was living in the Bible Belt and having extensive conversations with many of these evangelicals, I asked, why are you being so hateful to people who are part of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah.
And for them, what love means is by being honest. And to them, honesty means you're going to burn in hell. And I'm just telling you this because I love you and I want you to repent and believe.
Yeah.
So I don't entirely know how hopeful I am on that front with them, but I will also sort of echo Kelley's sentiments again, which is that this is coming from the Episcopalian Church, which I've been to a few services at Episcopalian churches, and for the most part, they seem to be mostly using the Bible to tell their congregation, hey, this is how you should individually be a better person. They're not the same as those Southern Baptist mega churches who are telling everybody you should vote for Trump and this is why. It's not it's not so much about externally changing the world in the way that they see fit. It's more about that sort of like internal growth. And I think that while the world would be a much better place if we didn't have religion, I mean, think about oh gosh, how many wars and deaths and suffering could be prevented. That's not realistic. And if we could get, those like hardcore fundamentalist evangelical white American Christians to come over to a nicer brand of Christianity. Yes, is it prolonging the problem? I'm sure. But is it a better alternative when we have people whose rights are literally being stripped every single day? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you did a good job of just kind of showing, both sides of that because yeah, I think I think for pretty much all of the wonderful people out there watching us or listening to us right now, they're all probably nodding their heads in agreement and saying like, yeah, heck yeah, like the fewer people out there that are worried about this, and more importantly, the fewer people out there that are actively trying to overturn systems of government to fit these ideologies and push their narratives. You know, if we can make that one less person by the end of the week, the end of the year, that is progress for sure. But I thought it was really great how everybody here has still, kind of highlighted some of the really toxic aspects of some of these religions still. The quote that I thought really, really hit home for me was Father Kendall Harmon, a popular Anglican blogger, it says. He said, if the purpose of the study was to spotlight, quote, a Jesus who comforts the afflicted, but not one who afflicts the comfortable, then there is a problem. And I don't know, that statement just really hit me hard because it kind of just feels gross. It kind of just feels like the whole point of what he's saying at the end of the day is to make people feel bad, to make people feel like they're not able to do things on their own. They're not able to achieve, greatness without giving praise constantly to some deity of some kind. And yeah, that definitely didn't leave a great taste in my mouth, but I am trying a new Kool-Aid lately, so it could be that too. But Teo, any other thoughts on this or?
Um, I was going to say something and I totally forgot what it was. So let me think if I can catch that
We'll
thought
come back
again.
around.
Yeah, I did. No, about the Episcopalian, I really, really hope that they, if we have to live with our kind of religion, please let it be the Episcopalian. Because before this, I was recording for other thing, and we were talking about hate preachers, and boy, are there people who are full of hate, who are talking to people who are listening to them, and sadly hate grows and grows. So when these guys say stuff like, oh yeah, those people marching for their rights, how I feel so excited when trucks accidentally ran them over, and yeah, I know that some of them have died, but according to the Bible all of them should die, so I don't care how they die. And they wish that other people suffer and die just because their Bible says so, and they become the representatives. They become the 50, how much it was? Yeah, 50% who are judgmental, hypocritical, self-righteous, arrogant, unforgiving, etc., etc., etc. When they become the majority is when you are on that road to the Christian country with a Sharia law, but in the Christian version. And I guess that is what we all are trying to fight by doing our activism and by educating people. So
Yeah.
I have to say, if we have to support somebody, some religion, Episcopalians, please don't mess this up for you, because you are the ones I would trust at least, or I would prefer. I wouldn't even trust them, but I would prefer them.
I think that was a pretty good wrap up.